Are you ready to branch out, to take a leap of faith, to love yourself and others fully? Then let go of whatever no longer serves you to take action now on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Erica will energize and excite you to power up your passionate dream that sets your soul on fire. With Erica's E3 approach, equipping, empowering, and enlightening yourself so you can be yourself for yourself. Get ready and get rooted to live a life without regrets, without what ifs, without should haves, and especially without empty feelings from a life unexplored. This hit show helps you build powerful and intentional roots to live it up, love it up, and let it go. Get fearlessly ready and powerfully rooted in your yes with your host, Erica Gifford Mills, and be fearless about your more and stand in your yes. Now on Get Rooted Radio.
Welcome, everyone. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go, right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Big shout out, as always, to my producer today, Jacob. Hey, Jacob, how you doing?
Hey, Erica, doing so well today. It's great to see you.
You as well. And it's been a few weeks. So how was your vacation?
Oh, it was fantastic. We got a lot of time on the beach together to just kind of rest. And it was my first time kind of being on a soft sand beach, being out here in the Northwest. It's all rocks and kind of cold water. And down in Florida, it was just like sitting in a bath, and it was really, really great for us.
Almost heavenly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to have you back. And I am very excited about today's episode, how to process and grow through divorce grief. And I know my friends, including myself, that could have used some of these tips and techniques that we're going to be discussing today. Because when you are faced with divorce, even if you may have wanted the divorce, you go through a grieving process. And if you aren't aware that's what's happening, you don't know what's going on. And the death of a marriage brings the loss of the hopes and the dreams you had as a couple, the loss of your normal family life, your routines, maybe friends and your community. And my guest today, Carrie Doubts, will share what it means to grieve well and some of the, quote unquote, rules of grief that you may have learned growing up that need to be consciously examined and set aside in order for you to move into acceptance of your losses. But before we jump right in, a little bit about Carrie. Carrie Doubts is a spiritual resilience coach working with men and women experiencing major life transitions, whether it be in relationships, career, health, or spirituality. She supports people to navigate through the upheaval and chaos of major life transitions and the sense of profound loss and identity confusion that are part of these changes. She assists her clients in discovering their natural resilience and wholeness when faced with difficult life challenges, utilizing a potential-based coaching philosophy. As the founder of Life's Next Chapter Coaching, her passion is helping men and women accelerate their healing process, discover new dreams for themselves, and consciously and powerfully rebuild their lives. The mission of the Life's Next Chapter Coaching is to assist clients to reconnect with their heart, reclaim their power, and realign with their purpose to create their life's next chapter. So please welcome Carrie Doubts. Carrie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Erica. It's great to be here with you and your listeners. I'm really excited to talk about this topic.
It is, and it's a topic I don't feel like we talk enough about because divorce is a major change, and it's not one of those that should be hidden from or ashamed. So maybe before we jump into some of the questions I want to ask, how did you kind of navigate your way into this specific area of coaching?
How did I navigate my way into this? Well, it was my own divorce that set me on a path of spiritual seeking and development and personal growth. I really realized that the pain that I was experiencing, it had to have its starting point inside of me. And I really wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to learn what I needed to learn so that I was not going to create this for my future again. And so, yeah, that was, I got my degree in spiritual psychology, and that was a really big part of my healing. And then by doing that, I also wanted to give back into this population of people who are really suffering through a divorce.
And I think that's so many people, through your own hardships or through your own experiences, that's where we do find it, right? So we can't stop when we go through these things. We just got to keep going, because that's the only way through, right? Is to keep going.
That's right.
So let's jump right in. So in your experience, why do so many people struggle emotionally with divorce?
Well, it's a great question, because a lot of times when people are describing what they're going through with their divorce, I tell them, it sounds to me like you're grieving, and they stop up short and go, oh, I hadn't really thought of it that way. But if you think about it, divorce is a death, like you had mentioned. It's the death of your marriage. And everything that you had put into that idea of living happily ever after. And so it kind of surprises people when they find themselves experiencing grief that comes along when their marriage ends, especially if they're the ones who had asked for the divorce. And that's what really blindsides people sometimes. And what is grief? Grief is the normal reaction to loss. It affects you physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. And when you're going through a divorce, you're going to need time and space to grieve multiple losses in order to really be ready to adapt to your divorce and to be able to move forward from it. And so grieving is a critical step in navigating through your divorce.
I think it's important to acknowledge that. Because as you said, even if the person, right, whoever initiated it, that yes, you might have wanted it. You might have thought this was what was best. And you might, all those things, your brain might have been like, yep. But sometimes our emotions aren't always that far, right? And when people are struggling and they think it's, why am I sad? Why am I upset? Why? And because I'm the one who started this. And it is that if you acknowledge that's the feeling that you're feeling, then you can take action about it. Yeah. So what do people not understand about the emotional upheaval of divorce that you can help them with?
Well, I think that, again, as you touched on, there's a range of emotions that you're going to experience with the death of your marriage. And you may experience them all, you may experience some of them. And they're also not going to go in the order that we talk about them. And this stages work comes from the work of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who did groundbreaking work in the understanding of the process of dying. And I kind of equate it to the process of the dying of your marriage, because there are stages that you can kind of go through, and that, see if you recognize yourself in any of these stages. That first stage is denial. Dealing with the death of your marriage. This is that psychological defense or coping mechanism that comes to play because we want to protect the mind and the emotions from being overwhelmed by too much pain. So we're holding on to the hope that we'll wake up from this bad dream at any minute, right? We refuse to accept the reality, and we suppress the facts out of our awareness. You hear people saying all the time, I can't believe this is happening. And, if you've been broadsided by the request for a divorce, it can take time to really let the reality of the situation sink in. If you've initiated the divorce, you may also be in denial about how much you're going to be grieving after you start the process. Yeah. And, that's, I think, what really surprises people is like, I started this, I wanted this. Now, why do I feel so sad? Why do I feel so hurt?
And I think that's, again, it's acknowledging those feelings before we keep going, because sometimes people want to ignore them. I mean, when you have these feelings that you're not sure of, it does get you very tongue-tied. And because you don't know what to do. I don't know what feeling this is, because you might think it's anger instead of sadness or grief, right? It's but why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what is grief. Before we go, Carrie, tell folks how they can reach you.
You can reach me at lifesnextchaptercoaching.com. That's my website. And my email address is carrie@lifesnextchaptercoaching.com.
Great. You are listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any portion of today's episode, you can catch it on getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe online to receive the latest news, events, specials, and words of encouragement. Go to getrootedradio.com. Even my dog is so excited about this episode. I mean, he's like, come on, stop the yip yapping. Let's get on with it. And I want to welcome back my guest, Carrie Doubts. And today's episode is all about divorce grief. So welcome back, Carrie, and thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Erica. Yes, so, go ahead.
I'll say, so before the dog starts barking again, let's jump right in. What are some of the biggest misunderstandings about grief that people have?
Well, there's a lot of them. And I think everybody who's a human being, we're not taught how to deal with our emotional lives that well. And so when a big event comes along that throws you into loss, grief is the natural reaction that we have to loss. When something important to us has been either taken away or we lose it or it's no longer in our lives anymore, it's that period of time that we need to adjust and adapt to life without that person or that thing or the situation that was so important to us. So it's going to, like I shared earlier, it's going to have an effect on us and all of the levels. It's going to affect us physically. You know, there's a lot of studies, research that's been done about what happens to us physiologically when we're grieving. So people have trouble sleeping, people have trouble sometimes eating too much or not wanting to eat or just not taking care of themselves physically. It's going to affect us, of course, emotionally and mentally. We're going to have all kinds of, I talk about this kind of grief fog that people get into, and with their mental processing kind of loses clarity and sharpness. We just lose that ability to focus sometimes when we're grieving. Grieving takes a lot of energy. And so sometimes we just feel like we're not really present, in our lives and not really able to focus. Of course, emotionally, we're dysregulated. We're all over the place. We're experiencing anger, relief, sadness, regret, just all over the show. And we're not used to, dealing with these big emotions. So we try to stuff them aside or not pay attention to them or tell ourselves, I'll just power through this. This is one of the misunderstandings, that people come to me with. It's like I've tried all these things and I'm still stuck in this grieving. And so those are some of the misunderstandings, that I can just power through it, or I can ignore it, or I shouldn't be feeling this way. So it doesn't really go away just because we try to pretend it's not there. It's going to come forward for us to deal with. And we need that space and the time to unpack our feelings and our thoughts and to be with ourselves with love and compassion while we go through something like this.
And that's so important, the love and compassion part, right? Because there are, what are some of the different stages? I mean, we know the stages of grief, right? And but for folks who may be listening who are new to it, what are the basic stages of grief? And then how do we sometimes cycle through those as we're going through divorce?
I don't necessarily think of us processing grief in the normal stages model that we talked about in terms of dealing with a death or our upcoming death or something like that. But anger is certainly one of those feelings that you're going to cycle through. It's part of our nature to get angry when we've been deeply hurt and we feel wrong. We can feel betrayed, especially in a divorce. And we're into the blame game, so it's like, it's not my fault, it's her fault, his fault, whatever it is. We're looking, who's at fault here? If only he or she would have changed. this wouldn't have happened. And we also feel this need to be right. You know, you talk with people about, you know, I have the moral high ground here. This is what happened, and I'm the right person. Divorce can become a battlefield where this war is waged, you know, and only one person is going to stand victorious in the end. And this can get really ugly. And you're determined to win, and that your partner must lose. And so this anger is really a big part of going through a divorce. And also, if you're not the person who wanted the divorce, you might hear yourself saying things like, it's not fair. I did everything I could to save this marriage. So anger at the other person, anger at ourselves, you know, what's wrong with me? Why does this keep happening to me? And a lot of people aren't comfortable with anger. So it's very common that it's going to come up. It's part of the process of assimilating the death of the marriage. And I'll talk later in our show about how to express and release anger, because that's a huge component that needs to be dealt with. And people can find it scary, you know, inside of themselves, and to be around other people's anger.
Yeah, and those are great. And because I think sometimes listeners, I mean, I know when I was going through my divorce, that pride kind of got in my way, right? For the most part, it was very amicable. I mean, we didn't even have attorneys. It was very great that way. But it, you know, that bit of pride gets in there. And it was not until later that I realized it was grief. I mean, it was pride too. Don't get me wrong. But it was the grief of this is not how I planned my life to go, right? And you have to start rethinking and looking deep inside, like you said, looking to see what is it about me that perhaps needs to be changed, corrected, more insight, looking at the other person's perspective and seeing that, because that's hard, because as you said, people want to win, right? They want to be right. It's not a win-win, it's a win-lose. And that's hard. And I know I didn't do that going through it. It was not till after that I could be like, all right, clearly there's two in a relationship. What happened?
Yeah.
But,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
I've talked to a lot of people who years after the divorce, it's all over, right? They're still angry. They have not let go of that. And it really harms them in a lot of ways. So,
and I think and it's important. You've said it a couple times during last segment and this segment, is that we are interconnected in all areas. And I've talked about it on several other shows, how you have to have that balance. You know, I have a thing called the balance wheel, or some people, the wellness wheel, right? And if you're way off, like in your finance area, it's not going to go round in a circle. It's going to go thud, go. And that's how, when you're grieving, if you're not sleeping well. If you're not sleeping well, then how's your stress level? If your stress level's off, what are you doing? Are you a compulsive eater, or are you a non-eater? And so then that's not going to give you energy to get you through what you need to do, which then is going to make you even more tired. And then it's a vicious circle. And it's mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And if we're not addressing it, it's gonna come back to bite us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love how you talk about the wheel, because I also have a grief wheel. It's a similar thing of how are you doing with processing and honoring your grief. And it's got these areas of, you know, the finance and legal part, and your self-care and so on. So if those things are out of balance, your level of acceptance, things like that, yeah, it's going to take a toll on your life, and it's going to hang you up.
Yeah, and we forget about it. I mean, sometimes we're like, well, I can get back that sleep later. And it's one thing if it is a one-off, right? It's a one-time thing, but you don't realize how much it becomes more than a one-time thing. Next, you know, it's a week that you haven't slept, then 2 weeks, then 3 weeks. And you know, it affects all areas of your life. And that's so important for folks to
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I try to tell people is that you're not going crazy, you know, because people can feel like, this isn't me. This isn't who I normally am. I don't even recognize myself. You're not going crazy, and you don't need fixing. You know, you just need some loving care and attention towards yourself while you're processing the hurt and the loss and the grief that you're feeling.
So I know that one of the things that we had talked about, you had a giveaway item that was this online course, the Transitions and Transformation, Thriving in the Midst of Change.
Mm-hmm.
Divorce is a change. So if you're listening and that's something that you're going through, tell folks how they could get that chance for that course.
They can contact me, or I think you have it on your notes or something like that. You get.
I can post it. I can post it out with the show.
Yeah, because I wanted to make that available, because a divorce is a huge life transition. And when we understand the process of where we are in this very murky kind of personal situation, it helps us orient ourselves to where we are and where we're ultimately heading, and why things feel the way they feel while we're in the middle.
Yeah, no, that is completely true. So before we go to our next break, Carrie, is there anything else you want to talk about with regards to what is grief and misunderstandings that folks have around grief itself?
I think people misunderstand depression and grief. You know, they feel like they feel depressed, which is another natural part of the grieving process. But then they say, I'm depressed. And they sort of marry themselves to that statement, when I just let them know, look, you're going through a situation of grieving. And so that is your feeling about it. It's not who you are. Grief is not who you are.
That's a great, because they can't distinguish the feelings, right? What's depression versus what's grief, and how maybe sometimes they go hand in hand, but that doesn't mean it has to stay there.
Exactly.
Yep.
They will misidentify what they're feeling with,
yep.
I need to go see a therapist because I'm depressed.
Yep.
And that may not necessarily be the case. They had been normally functioning in life and, you know, having a positive attitude, and this thing happens, and all of a sudden they're not used to feeling this sad and, you know, upset all the time. They think, oh, there must be something wrong with me. I need fixing.
Well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what it means to grieve well. But before we go, Carrie, tell folks how they can reach you.
I'm at Carrie at lifesnextchaptercoaching.com, and my website is Life's Next Chapter Coaching.
Wonderful. I am Erica Gifford Mills, and you are listening to Get Rooted Radio, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills, living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Don't forget to visit getrootedradio.com to listen to a replay of this episode, sign up for helpful tips, and learn about upcoming events. That's getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Carrie Doubts. Carrie, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I know it's a big topic, and I'm probably one of the only people who really love to talk about it, because we do need to talk about grief and grieving.
And I think especially around divorce, because I feel not as much now as 20, 30, 50 years ago. If somebody got a divorce, like that was taboo and you didn't do it and all that. But then to actually be saying I'm grieving about it, you know, that's another big aha moment, because you sometimes, and I don't agree with the statement, but sometimes people think, oh, it's your fault, you failed, right? You know, you're a big old failure for not being able to keep a marriage together. Why are you have no reason to be grieving. I don't agree with that statement by any means. And I think people are coming around, right? It's just like mental health. People are understanding more. They're getting to learn more about it. And so they're educating themselves and therefore can have a better conversation about it. But I think this is something that it needs to be talked about, because so many people are feeling it, but they don't realize that's what it is.
I'd like to distinguish in a way. There's a little different flavor to the grieving process when you're going through a divorce than if you've lost a husband or a wife to death. Stephen Levine has a saying. He says, losing a spouse or a partner through death breaks your heart. Losing a spouse or a partner through divorce shreds it. And I think that's really accurate in a way, because there's a level of self-blame and self-criticism, and it's not other people telling you you're a failure for the divorce. It's often yourself telling yourself, I failed at this. And so I see people in my practice really heaping a lot of blame and criticism on themselves for the divorce taking place. And that's where the invitation to not see it as a failure, but as a completion. The marriage is completing, rather than heaping that kind of judgment on yourself or your partner that you failed at this, because that shreds your heart. That is a wound that's hard to heal from.
Oh, absolutely. And I think along those same lines, because I want to expand upon that a little bit more, is what are some of the ideas about grief and grieving in our society that aren't helpful? I mean, that's definitely one of them right there, is the understanding of what, and I love that. I'm gonna have to write that down, because I think that is a great analogy. But what are some of the other ideas that are really not helpful that society has out there?
Yeah. These are kind of the common rules of grief that I encourage people to kind of take a look at. Are you believing this? And if you are, is it really serving you? So the first one I want to talk about is don't feel bad. You shouldn't feel bad. And a variation of this is just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get over it. You certainly hear a lot of that in people giving their well-intended advice to people going through divorce. We view sadness as a weakness in our culture. Mm-hmm. Really do. And if you share your sadness in front of other people, they seem to feel this immediate need to tell you all the reasons why you shouldn't feel this way. Don't feel bad. You're better off without him or her. I never liked him or her anyway, right? That you start to feel like your feelings are wrong. Yeah. Like you're wrong for feeling this way. So it's understandable that you feel sad. It's okay to feel sad. And when people try to fix you, they're just doing what they were taught, but they don't understand that doesn't help you. And a second rule is you should grieve alone. This kind of follows on to don't feel bad. If you feel bad, you better do it in private. Cry yourself to sleep on your own pillow. We're taught to keep our messy emotions to ourselves. Nobody wants to hear this, right? No, so you probably have some kind of desire to put on a brave front to others and do your crying alone. I'm fine. That's how you respond when people say, how are you doing? And you get the message also energetically that nobody really wants to hear about how you're feeling and how you're doing. So you keep it to yourself. You want to, pretend like you're doing okay. It's holding it together, stuffing your feelings until you can be by yourself. So that's another rule. Another rule is you need to be strong for the others. You need to be strong for others, especially be strong for the kids. Don't let them see you're upset. Here's the thing, your kids know you're struggling, and you might want to consider the underlying message that you're sending to your kids. If they ask you what's wrong and you say nothing, because they know instinctively that you're not being honest with them. And that's the building blocks for shame. When their reality collides with what you're telling them. So you're doing them a disservice if you lie about it. You're better off just to say something like, I'm not okay right now, but I will be. to be giving them that assurance. I'm not feeling that great right now, but I'll be fine. I will be okay. And, it's really helpful to do that, to not have to feel like you have to lie and be strong for everybody. And another one I see a lot in the groups that I run for people going through divorce. When can I start dating again? When's the magic time that has to elapse before it's okay for me to date? And that's the rule of replace what was lost as soon as possible. We want to replace the loss. And I think it's a mistake, looking to replace that partner before they've had the time to really do the work of truly recovering from the last partner. And it's just another way that we distance ourselves from the pain. And it's so tempting really to bypass all that difficult inner work and just set our sights on finding, the right person. That person was the wrong person. So let me find the right person. And we get into, relationships that before the ink is dry on the judgment. And I just tell people, slow down, give yourself time to harvest what you're learning about yourself and your part in the completion of the marriage, and resist that urge to get married again right away. And because you just will most likely recreate the same problems over again.
And I think that those are great ways that we need to rethink, right? Because I think it is important that we do try to step back and look at the whole. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it's society doesn't like messy, mm-hmm. and life is messy. People are messy. So I think it's kind of ironic that we don't want that. We don't want to. Let's keep that like this. Let's mm-hmm. put it in this nice little box and move forward. And I think we can't. You need to feel the feelings, right? And acknowledge them and do all that.
Do we have time for one more rule? Because I think this is important. And also, you should be over it by now. You hear people say that all the time. Like, there's an expiry date on your grief. What? You're still not over that? It's been a year. It's been 5 months. You hear all this. Yes. And it's a variation on this kind of time heals all wounds, There's no timeline on grief. And, we live in this kind of fix-it society that we're talking about that tends to be looking for quick solutions to our problems. There's no timeline for being over it. When people say that, they don't understand the nature of your loss. They're just judging it by their own experience, which probably doesn't fit.
Right. So I know we were revisiting some of the ways that we might have always looked at grief. What are some other helpful ways of thinking about grief instead?
Give yourself permission and time and space to feel, to mourn, to rest, and then find a new normal. And so that requires slowing down, first and foremost. Resist that urge to try and speed up through these uncomfortable feelings and just kind of power through. Slow down. It's really this time to meet your feelings with compassion, with understanding. And you only are able to do that when you slow down to the speed of your own presence in your life. And pay attention to you, to your thoughts, your feelings, your process of healing, and leave the other person out of it. I hear a lot of people is like, well, she's out doing, and it's like, let's just draw the curtain over there and give them the dignity of whatever process they're doing. We don't need to be part of that. Let's focus in on you. Yeah.
I'm laughing, and I'm not laughing at what you're saying. I was trying to make my friend laugh, and she was doing that exact same thing as, and I'm like, not your circus anymore, not your monkeys, right? Let's just, and so, and it's true, right? Because we do, it's in comparison is the thief of joy. in so many avenues. So if you're looking at somebody else who might have gone through a divorce, or you're looking at your former partner that you are divorcing and they seem like they're doing better, or it doesn't affect them, or whatever that if then that might be, you're going to make yourself go crazy. And you're not crazy. We already determined that, right? But
Right.
You're comparing what you're feeling, you're comparing your feelings and with somebody else's, and those aren't your feelings. Everybody's different.
And you're interpreting and assuming, things
Yes.
that just may not be true. So I tell people, think of it as you have a neighbor, right? Your soon to be ex, or your ex lives over there, and it's just a neighbor, and you look over in their yard, you can see their yard, and you go, wow, I don't like that patio furniture arranged that way. I'm going to get over there and tell them how to rearrange their patio furniture. No. You stay in your yard. They stay in their yard. You work
Yes.
on your patio furniture.
That is great. I love that. Well, we're going to take a quick break on that note, because I don't know if we could get any better than that line. But when we come back, we're going to end today's show with some tips and tricks to help you grieve well. This is Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. If you missed any of the information during the last segments, go to getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com to listen to the replay. Don't forget to subscribe, sign up for tips and special events on upcoming coaching sessions at getrootedradio.com. Welcome back to my guest, Carrie Doubts. Before we wrap up today's episode, tell listeners how they can reach you and find out about all your services.
It's Carrie, CARRIE, at lifesnextchaptercoaching.com. And that's my website as well.
Wonderful. So it's been really a pleasure having you on to discuss divorce grief. It's not something that people talk about, and it's also often confused, as we talked about in earlier segments, with just being depressed. And I think what I love is this tool that you have, because we all go through grief. And from a divorce grief perspective, we want to learn how to grieve well. I think any grief, we want to learn how to grieve well. Mm-hmm. So what is a way you can share to help people do just that?
Well, as I just shared in the last segment, the thing to do is to slow down, to pay attention to yourself, to take care of yourself. And I have a healing practice that I introduced to my clients pretty early on in the process. And it's a journaling process. So, handwriting on paper, good old fashioned way of doing it, not on the typewriter or on the computer, but it's a tool that it gives space and permission for us to create a safe space to process, to heal, to feel everything that's coming up. So the process is, we're giving access to the feelings, we're giving them a name, we're naming them. That's an important part. I feel stressed is not really a feeling. I feel sad. I feel hurt, express them and then release them in service to freeing up the energy that's stuck there. Because really, the feelings that we have, the emotions that we have, are the energy that our thoughts ride on. So it's energy in motion, and we want to keep it moving so it doesn't get stuck in our consciousness, doesn't get stuck in our bodies and come out in somatic illnesses. So it's a fairly simple process. You just get some pieces of paper, a pen. You make sure you have total privacy. Close the door, let people know that you're doing a process, and they don't need to come running in if they hear crying or anything like that. You're fine, So you don't want to be disturbed. Total privacy, solo process. And it's a writing process where you're just really writing what's on your mind. You're writing as fast as possible. You're not even writing in complete sentences. You might say, I feel so. And then, you're just trying to keep up with your mind because it's going really fast, right? And so you're just writing as much as you can, and you're transferring that energy from your consciousness down through your arm onto the paper. And you keep doing this, write, Right. Just keep the pen moving. Sometimes when I'm angry and I'm doing this, I start scribbling. It's just like, so there's not even words at that point, but it's just the energy is coming out. And as the emotions are surfacing, keep writing. If it's anger, keep scribbling. If it's sadness, keep writing while you're crying. The thought, it comes up, it goes out through the arm, and it brings up these emotions. And so you'll find at some point in the writing, the emotional energy will start to shift and you'll start to feel better. And the energy is done. You'll know you're done. You'll have a sense of release, of relief. Now you take those pages that you wrote on and you immediately shred them or burn them. You don't want anybody to read them. You don't want to read them yourself. You basically vomit it on a piece of paper and you want to clean it up.
I love that.
This is something to really keep in mind because you've released this. You don't want to put it back in. And, it can be so healing to do this, even every day for a while. If you're really feeling emotionally triggered, anytime I feel emotionally triggered, I get out my paper and my pen and I go at it because the value is you're moving that energy up and out.
I like that a lot. So it's grab as much paper as you can, privacy, and just start writing. Don't think about what to write. Just write anything that pops into that head and just keep the flow going. Doesn't have to be legible because you're not going to read it again, folks, right? It's just getting it from inside your body out, right? That's
there's nothing wrong to say.
Right. Correct.
It's like this person should die. You can say that,
right? It's just you're writing it down,
scribbling. Right?
And then you're shredding it or burning it right away.
Yeah, and just a moment of compassion for yourself when you feel that energy release. It's often that you start to feel that peace and that sense of, oh, this is something I did for myself, to take care of myself, to be present for myself, even when I'm having a hard time. It builds that muscle.
That compassion part is so important because I know for me, it's very hard to be, for me, to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And then if I do express any of that vulnerability, I get angry that I just let my soft underbelly show, right? And then I don't have compassion for myself. And so it's those little things that I know, but yet we need to have that. We need, because we're human, we need to have those feelings. And it doesn't mean you're a lesser person if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're depressed, if you're mad, if you're happy, right? You heaven forbid you're happy, because then sometimes people are like, wait, you're happy? Shouldn't you be sad? And now you've got this guilt that, oh, should I be sad, right? And you have all these emotions and you just need to let them out.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, one thing I say is don't try to go work through all this alone. Get support. The support that you receive, the quality of it is going to make a huge difference. Whether it's a coach or a counselor or a support group or friends that are able to receive you and to really listen to you and to deeply care for you while you're going through this. Don't try to do this alone.
Yeah, you need your tribe, right? You need to find those supportive people, because, and not the negative Nancy's, and also not the people who always just agree with everything you say. You need those people who are going to be honest with you and have that support, and make sure that you can rely on others, but as well as rely on yourself.
Yeah, you need those people who can just quietly companion with you while you're going through it, and not try to, like I said, not try to fix it or tell their story, just listen.
Yeah.
That's a word, I think, to people out there who, how do I support somebody who's grieving? Just be there, show up and listen.
It's the Winnie the Pooh one. When I'm having a sad day, well, then I shall sit with you and we'll have a sad day together. I love that, because it is just, sometimes you don't need anybody to talk to. You just need somebody to be there, to sit with you in the darkness. So is there any other tips or tricks or activities that folks can learn from or participate in before we close out the show?
I think just remembering the main point is this is hard. It's hard to be a human being. It's hard enough when things are going well, but when things go sideways and then we get tripped up into, the feelings of grief and everything, it's big, and you don't have to do this work alone. Is my parting gift.
Thank you, Carrie, so much for being with us. She's at Life's Next Chapter Coaching. You can reach her via email is it Carrie at Life's Next Chapter Coaching, or the website lifenextchaptercoaching.com?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
There's a contact page.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with us today. I appreciate your time, and I love this topic. And people, go out there, look at Carrie's stuff, and contact her if you need some help through this divorce grief process. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to Get Rooted Radio. If you missed any part of today's episode or you want to listen again, go to getrootedradio.com for the podcast. And don't forget to tune in the first and third Monday of each month at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, and 2 p.m. Pacific right here on Transformation Talk Radio. Before I sign off, remember to ask yourself, am I living a rooted life? If the answer is no, then take action to make that answer a yes. One way to take action is to set up your free Empower Hour call with me. No charge, no obligations. Go to getrootedradio.com to find out how I can help you take action. And if you are ready to live, love, and let go, join me for my signature 12-week group coaching series, The Rooted Life. This series will assist you in achieving your goals and moving forward by letting go of the things that no longer serve you, learning to love yourself and others fully, and living life to its fullest. Go to getrootedradio.com to learn more about the 12-week series and get that free Empower Hour. Thank you for tuning in. Have an amazing day, and I'm looking forward to the next time on Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, letting it go. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Get Rooted Radio with Erica Gifford Mills. Living it up, loving it up, and letting it go. Visit getrootedradio.com if you've missed any part of this hit show, and tune in on transformationtalkradio.com to live fearlessly in your more and powerfully rooted in your unlimited yes. For more information and to work with Erica directly, visit getrootedradio.com. That's getrootedradio.com, and get ready to live it up, love it up, and let it go.